Hi, I'm Betsy Rosenberg, back with you on Green TV, and very excited about my next guest. He's someone I've been honored to know for at least a decade, maybe decade and a half. He is John Roulac, and you may not have heard his name unless you're in green circles because he's well known there. But you may know Nutiva products, organic superfood products. That is something that I want to talk about first, but he has many more things he's done. John, you've done so many things, it's really hard to know where to begin. But in addition to founding Nutiva and running it for 20 years or so and really growing it to, I think, national, maybe an international brand, you've also done a lot of work with hemp. You had a big victory back in 2004 in the federal courts. I want to hear about that. And you've also been a pioneer in something very close to my heart, and that's home composting, because a rind is a terrible thing to waste. When I go away from home and I can't compost, it physically bothers me. You probably can relate to that. Maybe some of our viewers can too. You've written 4 books on hemp, and it seems like hemp is having a moment right now. Let's hope so. Hemp, hemp, hooray. Also an early advocate going back to 1988. You don't look that old, for California forests, and co-founder of Forests Forever. And more recently, co-founder of Great Plains Regeneration. We're going to hear about all of that, but I also want to mention a film that if you haven't seen, must see. It's available on Netflix, I think, or certainly many streaming sites, and it's Kiss the Ground. And he is the executive producer. Thank you for that film, John. So important. And it's all about regenerative agriculture. And you not only teach people who are watching, but you tell a great story. It's very compelling. And regenerative agriculture is so hot right now, and we're going to explain what that is, because sometimes you hear these buzzwords but people don't necessarily understand. But take us back. What woke you up? What was your eco epiphany, John Roulac? What made you start to tune into your environment and decide what you wanted to do to improve it?
Yeah, thanks. First, I'd like to say that thank you for having me on today. And yes, the film Kiss the Ground is available on Netflix and also Vimeo as well. And Woody Harrelson's the narrator. So yeah, been a big project that was just released last fall in 2020. Um, what's the epiphany? Couple things. At a young age, I got the opportunity to spend a lot of time in nature, and so I like to joke. Some people, parents, they collect, old cars or antiques, different things. My parents collected islands, remote islands. In the Pacific Northwest. So I spent a lot of time on that at a young boy. Playing the tide pools and being around trees and forests and that. And then the contrast of living, that was during kind of the summertime, and most of the time of the year we lived in the Pasadena, Los Angeles, California area.
I
And
did not know about that.
yeah,
And just before you go on, what are your parents doing for a living that they collect islands? I've never heard those words together, collecting
yeah.
islands.
My mom and dad were real estate. They were builders and developers, built single family homes, apartments, and commercial buildings. Roulac Construction. My mom and dad founded that. And but back then, islands weren't so expensive in the 60s and early 70s. Today the island that we sold for 65,000 is worth like probably 4 million. So a
Yeah,
little inflation.
at,
Um,
at least. Did they go into green building at any point, I hope?
Um,
Career?
back in the 60s, I don't know if they had what was called green building, but they 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 always like protected. I remember they protected some of like the oak trees instead of like just cutting down all the trees. They would save some of the trees, um, and but yeah, my parents kind of pioneered that. And I was saying, growing up in Southern California, it was very polluted. So 10 months a year in very polluted environment, hard to breathe when you go out and play because they didn't have pollution controls, and then 2 months in a remote islands nature, no electricity. Um, the
So
different
with that kind of dichotomy of a background, what did you study in college and what did you plan to do? Because you want to do so
well,
many amazing things.
that's interesting. When I was 11 years old, I told my teacher in fourth grade that Christopher Columbus didn't discover America. They were teaching us that in the school books, and she threw me out of the classroom. Best thing that ever happened. And essentially, I learned at a young age that the system the school system, our communities is really designed to create consumers that are really trained to be good consumers and kind of follow the order of the hierarchy. And so I learned that maybe maybe Christopher Columbus didn't discover America, and I was like, why would they throw me out of a classroom for just telling them something that was basic? And it's funny, I read about it at the library, 100 yards away. Set me on to not necessarily believing in everything I was being taught, and then fast forward in 1980, they dumped nuclear waste, unidentified truck driver 9 miles from my house when I was living in Altadena, and that really when I became an environmentalist in the early 80s, there was very few people who were environmentalists at that time. And just people thought we could just cut down all the trees we wanted, we could burn all the oil we wanted, we could fill up all the landfills, we could have all the plastic, we could have just do any of that. And that was just a fine, normal, good business as usual thing. And that's what was taught in the schools. And I kind of rejected that. So, and then out of that, I was interested in not only the environment and started to study that and learn about that, but I became very interested in health. And because my parents were into business and I'd been reading the Wall Street Journal since I was 14, I had an interest in business, and that led me to founding a company called Harmonious Technologies that promoted home composting, and then eventually Nutiva, to bring the goodness of hemp to the world and to the United States through 500 hemp bars. And then immediately the government says, "Oh, your hemp is the same category as heroin. We think you're in violation of Schedule 1 drug laws. You're going to face 10 to 15 years in jail if you continue this on. And why don't you just go away because we know best?"
Hmm. Sounds like it's John Roulac Rebel. I should add that to your
Yeah,
title.
yeah, yeah, definitely the rebel. Uh, and I was like, really? And I really didn't. I was kind of a stubborn person. I was like, really, I don't really like
Like
that
it.
program. So with Dr. Bronner's and Nature's Path, we fought back. We sued the federal government. We won, and the basis now hemp foods are legal starting in 2004, and it took us another 10 or 12 years to actually grow hemp in America. So first, you couldn't grow it and you couldn't eat it. Then they said, well, we're gonna make it illegal to then we're gonna make it legal to eat, but you can't grow it. And in Australia, it was legal to grow and illegal to eat. So, there are a bunch of those things. So, and then with Nativa, we also pioneered organic farming, got into coconut oil. And at the time, people said coconut oil causes heart disease. It was the worst saturated fat. But, if you go to Sri Lanka and Thailand, where they eat coconut for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you notice how people are all obese in Thailand. You just see people overweight everywhere, and they come to America and they get really skinny because they eat corn and soy and canola oil. It's like this phenomenon. You know,
Au
um,
contraire,
so,
au contraire.
but you
Yeah.
see, but you see Harvard Medical School and Yale and all the professors, they all say that saturated fats cause heart disease and we need canola oil. They're convinced of this. And
Hmm.
so
That's the worst.
there's a level of corporate corruption that captures agencies and universities, and really we really need to kind of wake up and step back. But you have medical doctors who will say, oh, they believe something they read in a paper because a person in a white coat wrote it with a PhD and MD next to his name. But you can go to an entire country and people are thin and they're eating coconut and it must be bad. It's the same way with demonizing meat. They say meat causes heart disease. You know,
And
and and
cancer.
and it's just made, this is all made up stories, that the power structure, because they want to because what really is causing the problem is the sugar and other junk food, but the sugar industry doesn't want to be blamed, so they look for things. So like they're always like, how are the French women, like, before they started getting into the junk food, even over there in France, how were they so trim and in good shape, and they ate a regular
Peas,
diet.
bread.
And so it's because the local fresh food. So, just practicality. And so that's what I've kind of tried to do in my career. And folks in Nativa, we really grew fast, and and then eventually we got a lawsuit, and when people sued me for selling coconut oil, and I had to deal with trial lawyers, and kind of, and that was what was funny in running Nativa was when I was up and coming, and when we were a small company, it was really fun. We were like the challenger. And once I got to that point where we had 100 people in the company, and we were getting all this media. Then like there was an X on your back, and
Wait
then
a
then,
minute.
then you
Did
were
you say you got in trouble for selling coconut oil? I did not know that about your past, John.
yeah
You're going to have to explain that a little bit because I could see where there's controversy over whether or not it's good for
yeah.
you. I hear that still going on, but
So
but
yeah. So
what's wrong?
what's happened is the ones who sell the competitor, kind of going back in the 19, and this is a little complex, and sometimes I can talk a little fast and jump from subject to subject. So some people have a hard time always grokking
Give
everything.
us give us the 2 minute version because I have so many more
Yeah,
questions.
yeah. The bottom line is the animal feed industry had a real problem in the 1960s. They had all this leftover corn and soil. They didn't know what to do with it because before cows used to eat grass. Now they forced them into pens. They wanted to feed them corn and soy, but they didn't want the oil. They just wanted the meal. They had all this leftover oil. Then they had to demonize their competitors, which was butter and saturated fat. They got Monsanto and Syngenta and Bayer, who sell all the chemicals, to change the laws in Washington, D.C. to create the structure so that lawyers can then find out some obscure rule in the FDA and sue me and cause me to have to pay them $5 million to go away.
Hmm. Okay, so that
That's
that's
that's that's the
have you
ridiculous
written a
piece.
book yet on something just besides hemp? Because it sounds like your story is like a whole education
Yeah,
in itself.
yeah, yeah. And
So you should.
the last thing I would say is the countries that eat the most saturated fat in the world have the least amount of heart disease. And there's nothing wrong with saturated fat, but when you have so much vegetable oils, such as the United States and Canada and Britain, has the highest saturated fat, has the highest level of heart disease because they eat so much corn and soil everywhere. So at Nativa's really vision is to have healthy, good foods, whole foods, and from chia to hemp to coconut, and I stepped down from Nativa and about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's going along. And matter of fact, we just purchased Coconut Secret, which is like a soy sauce but made from coconut. It's like a coconut sauce, and it's doing very well. And we have a great team there running. And I let other people deal with lawyers and spreadsheets and HR issues. And I'm semi-retired and working on new environmental projects.
I'm
Um,
glad you are because
yeah,
you're needed. We're going to get to those in a minute, but I do have to ask because, like I said, I'm not exaggerating when I say I'm addicted to buttery coconut oil that Nutiva makes. How did you, and nobody else has got it? I mean, ghee would be the closest thing. Make coconut oil taste so much like butter that you like. It could make me give up butter.
yeah. The
It
first
did.
thing, we actually have a vegan ghee now. We have a sister product for that. You'll have to try with coconut
Good.
oil and all avocado oil. So my idea was, how do we take a coconut oil that not everyone likes the flavor and make it more butter-like? And so we essentially use uh, organic, like a butter flavor, which includes like fermented plants such as sunflower and mint, other things that kind of, and then kind of mimic the flavor, and other plants that will mimic the flavor of butter, and then we add it to it, and so it's a way for people who are not interested in butter, they can eat coconut butter with a flavor. So that's how we do that.
Maybe because
And we
it's
also
yellow, it looks like butter
we,
too.
we put like turmeric and natto. We put natural plants that make another color. And our latest thing we're pioneering is avocado oil. So we work with small farmers in Ethiopia making avocado oil. So Nativa continues to grow, and we also planted 100,000 coconut seedlings in the Philippines with our small farmers. So we're a big fan of tree planting, and I'd like to talk to you more about my latest tree planting projects.
We're going to get to that. But first, for anyone who has not heard of Nutiva, where can they find the products? And are you growing internationally? Maybe you already have. Give me an update.
Yeah, Nutiva, we're in about 25,000 stores around the world. We're today available in the United States and in Whole Foods and Sprouts, Walmart,
Not the
Kroger.
buttery coconut oil. I have to order that.
Not everyone. Yeah, so you can also buy it at nativa.com, Thrive Marketplace, Walmart.com, Amazon.com. We're also in Canada. We're one of the largest natural food brands in Canada. And yeah, and you can get our products, by and internationally through e-commerce.
Okay, so from Nutiva, what was your next big project? Because I have a long list here
I,
and I'm not
I
necessarily sure
decided
it's
to
in
go.
chronological order. You tell
Yeah, I
us.
decided to jump into hemp CBD, and I formed a company called Botanicals. That was a very expensive adventure, and I felt that there was a need because most of the CBD on the market, which is an extract of the flower, and it's very good for muscle relaxation, pain relief, and it also can impacts our brain and mood. Um, it's a little controversial. The FDA, it hasn't approved it, but it's sold in the stores all over. So I thought people would be interested in a certified organic, more regeneratively grown. And boy, was I wrong on that. So we had a
You
great
know,
product that had
there's such a thing as being too early. I can relate to spending a lot of time
yeah.
and money
So
before the
so
world is ready for what
that
you got.
so I stepped down as CEO a year and a half ago on that, but our products are all over, and I got to talk to thousands and thousands of people, sometimes even like over 1,000 people at Expo West on Expo East, and talk about the importance of soil health and all those things. But so then I shifted to that. I'm a bit of a which I've had to like really look inside more. I'm a bit of a gambler, and I get these ideas, and some of them work well. Like, hey, maybe America would be ready for hemp. I was a little early, but eventually it worked out pretty well. Maybe people's ready for organic or CBD. Maybe not such a good idea. Maybe people are ready for a movie on regenerative agriculture, Kiss the Ground. Yeah, that is a good idea.
Yeah, they can't all be hits. No
Yeah.
entrepreneur has 100%
Yeah,
success.
yeah. So
So
my latest thing is I invest in other entrepreneurs. So I'm involved in an organic kombucha beer called Dr. Hops, which has had its ups and downs business wise, but it's what the number one, number two, and number four selling kombucha alcohol in Whole Foods. So it's changing the alcohol space to create more demand for organic ingredients, and it's a better for you. And then I'm also involved in something that's kind of ironic. Someone, a very successful billionaire, green billionaire, told me you should check out this company, and it's involved in the chicken business. And I'm listening to this, and I'm going, no, I don't know about that. And they kept telling me, and after a while, I said, this is really interesting. It's a company called Cook's Venture. I'm an investor and advise the CEO. And if we want to change agriculture in America, we have to change animal agriculture. And the worst animal agriculture in the world today is chicken agriculture. That chickens are put in small containers, horrible GMO food, lots of bad conditions. So basically, we're working to scale, a more regenerative supply chain around chickens. And for instance, we just planted 20,000. We have an agroforestry, 20,000 food forest of hazelnuts. And the chickens go outside, so that's free range pasture. They have access for that, and it's a way to scale and take on people like Tyson and Hormel. So the company's growing very fast. It's like doubling, tripling sales for this year versus last year, um, and then I also have an I
that
also
isn't even on your bio. You've done so many things, you can't
yeah,
even
yeah.
come up with them
And then I'm
all.
also I have a nonprofit foundation that I support projects from all over the world. And so, for instance, I just gave a $25,000 grant to a group that's processing buffalo owned by the Cheyenne River tribal in North Dakota, or I think they're actually in just the northern part of South Dakota. And then I work on tree planting projects. I also support. I try to support a lot of BIPOC projects because as a privileged white man, I've done very well economically and financially. A lot of things were given to me because of the color of my skin, because of the background of my family. I'm aware of that. I don't try to make like there's something wrong because I did that, but I did well and I want to play it forward. So I
Good for you.
support different projects. I'm paying for a basketball court in a very tough neighborhood in St. Louis. And then I'm also planting a lot of trees. That's one of the things I'm doing. I'm planting trees all over the world with change agents and people that I like. And that's led me to found an organization called agroforestry regeneration communities. And our focus is Guatemala in East Africa. We don't have our website up, but we will soon. But the projects that I support there do called Contour Lines Corp in Guatemala and Permaculture Paradise Institute. And what we do there really is I just basically support people on the ground who know how to farm and farm in a way as if nature is the focus. And what they tend to do is work with farmers who are maize growers. It's so funny. Both in Guatemala and in Malawi, which is a small country in southern Africa, just north of South Africa, and the farmers there grow maize, and they use a lot of chemical fertilizers, and they don't have very good nutrition. And if there's poor weather, then they lose money, and then they can starve. And it's a very tough situation. So we teach them how they can make their field more like a forest. So we bring the principles of forestry in there and plant trees that make nitrogen. So Bill Gates wants to spend billions of dollars in Africa to give people chemical fertilizers, which are expensive and don't really help the soil. They create dis-ease in the soil, in the people. They help kill off our oceans. But instead of giving chemical fertilizers made by fracking natural gas and all the downsides of fertilizer, we use nature and we create a fertilizer tree that fixes nitrogen. And the farmers now, when they chop the tree and they take those leaves after 6 months or a year and it fertilizes it. And what they really notice is when there's a drought, their crops do so much better. So when we hear about Africa, we go, oh, they're having these massive droughts. The amount of rain dropping hasn't really decreased. What's happened is we've denuded the land because of our racist, colonialist systems by the economic powers, and we treat Africa and some of these other countries, and I can say this because now I'm older. I wouldn't have said this when I was CEO of Nutiva because my bankers, my board of directors wouldn't like me to say that.
And you wouldn't say that if I was interviewing you on CNN or MSNBC because they would kill the show, but we can say it on Green TV.
Right. And so we need to look at what we kind of fund and how we treat people. And that's a process for all of us. And like as someone like myself, I know I need to change. And I need to like now CEOs today, they have to change how they run companies. They really have, like with COVID and all the challenge people, you need to really check in with your team. How are you emotionally doing? How are you dealing with this? What's going on in your family versus can you just get the work done, the report by Monday? Thank you, goodbye. So it's everyone, we all have to learn in this new era. But we literally, by bringing nature into the heart of farming and agriculture and business, we can have a very dynamic economy. We can have a better environment. And so these projects literally gives me so much joy because it's so simple. It's literally, I call it agroforestry's low-hanging fruit. When I say agroforestry, there's a couple different ways to look at it. But in some cases, we just take these small farmers, and every 5 meters we plant a tree that takes nitrogen from the atmosphere, fixes it into the soil, and then the leaves they kind of chop down and drop the leaves and turn it into a fertilizer in the soil. So now the farmers have better nutrition for the soil, and so we do that, and then we also do more intensive agroforestry where we plant lots of these trees and we plant bananas or papayas or mangoes or avocados. So in Guatemala, we work with a project where they take people who are cutting down the forest to plant maize, and many of these are Mayan people, and they have issues about land access. And so we say, if you will put down mulch, we'll give you 10 fruit trees, mangoes, avocados, rambutan, different types, and then we plant 100 native and nitrogen fixing trees, and they do much better. And because it protects them with a shade, and now they get food. They have firewood, and then we plant row crops of cassava, pineapple, and sugar gives them a cash crop. And we've worked with 600 families. I just someone contacted me with LinkedIn. I'm going to wrap up here in a minute. Someone contacted me on LinkedIn and said, "Oh, I know you're interested in agroforestry, John. You should meet One Tree Planted, a U.S. nonprofit." I introduced One Tree Planted to my folks in Guatemala, and long story short, boom, we got a $400,000 grant to plant 500,000 trees in the coming year. So we're going to go from 600 families in Guatemala to 3,000. I
Wow.
calculated if we could get $8 million, we could change the lives of 500,000 farmers in Guatemala. 500,000, I mean, excuse me, that's 100,000 farmers, 500,000 people. Out of a country of 15 million people, would
Mhm.
transform the country. We have the solution. We just need to execute and, fund it. And the question is, will the billionaires and the gazillionaires, and where I live, I have a couple of them live within a few miles of me, will they just start, instead of going to space, instead of talking about ESG portfolio, can they actually invest in nature? And that's what Kiss the Ground Film's about. I know that's what your program is about. And we have the solutions, and let's regenerate.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Kiss the Ground. I know that it took more years than you probably expected for it to happen. If you can just take us inside the making of that film, which really does demonstrate what regenerative agriculture is. And for those who haven't seen it yet, I know you've been describing examples of regen agriculture, but and there was another great film that I'm sure was about that as well, even if they didn't mention the words, and maybe they did. I saw it a few years ago at Sundance, Big Little Farm.
Big Little Farm, yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, yeah,
Tell us
that
about
was
those
great.
films, beautifully made, so, so compelling a story. And people, who's the main character in Kiss the Ground, the farmer who became such a big advocate?
Gabe Brown and Ray Archuleta. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
tell
so,
us behind the story,
yeah,
what
yeah.
what
So
happened?
in 2013, I was at a farming conference, and a friend of mine, a mentor, Will Allen, which is Will Allen, the farmer in Vermont. He's like 85, great farmer, and he gave a presentation about the impact of climate change from agriculture chemicals, and how it was such an impact. And I was like, really? And so I started to investigate it. And I was like, how is it that I've been going to all these organic farming conferences, spending time on organic farms, sourcing organic food, and working with farmers, and I'd never heard the idea that healthy soil was a key to climate change. It's like the key. And I was blown away. And I was like, and then I started talking to more people. And after 6 months, I thought I'd lost my mind. I said, how is it that the number one organic farming conference is the number one, the Organic Trade Association, the Expo West? Nobody's talking about it. Like, they don't talk about soil health and climate change. Like, well, hello, like what is wrong
Welcome
with this? So I
Welcome
said,
to
let's
my
put
world
it
where the news networks are not talking about the biggest existential crisis humanity's ever faced. And
right.
there's not one program, 1 hour a week, a month, maybe once a year, they'll do a little special on Earth Day.
Yeah.
Like, am I crazy or is the world crazy? I
Yeah,
call it an
world's
environmental
crazy.
illness.
We're
Yeah.
crazy in a crazy world.
Never
But
more so than right now. My God, look what's going on. But
so
go
I
ahead.
so I came to me. I said, "Let's do a film." So I had this film. So I got to meet the filmmakers. So I went and Ojai is, where I spent most of my adult life, and it's where a lot of ideas and inspirations and visions have come to me. And uh, um,
It's where
uh,
Patagonia is based, aren't they
Patagonia is
there?
based, and it's where I launched my home composting movie and I mean my home composting programs, my backyard composting book, and all that stuff. So I met the filmmakers, Josh and Rebecca. They live there, and they already knew friends of mine, Ryland and Finian from Kiss the Ground, the nonprofit, and so I said, let's do this film, and they'd been people had been pitching those ideas, and they said, yeah, let's do it. They said, well, you need $50,000, otherwise we can't do it. I said, yeah, let's do it. And Nutiva put up the first 30. I called David Bronner. You put up 10 more. He said, yeah. Kiss the Ground put up 10. Boom. And then like 4 years later, we had film, was ready to go, and it was like, I don't know if this, like, is this really the best we could do? And it really wasn't quite where I wanted it. Other people said yeah, and I said nah, and everybody was just like,
Ready to be done with it. Ready to be done with it.
and so we just stood in there and we kept improving it and got feedback, and then like the irony was, people said, you know how you get Netflix attention? There's this one type of person that Netflix is interested in. It's one type. You got to cover that type. It's called celebrity. Crazy world we live in.
Yeah,
So,
don't
so,
get me
so
started.
we
Don't
had
get
Ian
me started.
Somerhalder, and we had Woody. We put Woody in as narrator. And different people. By the way, I spoke to Ian. He is totally committed to regenerative agriculture. Really great guy.
It's obvious when you see the film, he's into it. He's not
Yeah,
just doing a part.
very
He's
passionate.
playing both.
Really, he the joke is he's so into it. He's like, "Hey, it's 7 in the morning. Hey, we're ready to go." You know,
Well,
like
he's been into the green scene for years. I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
hearing
yeah. He's
about
the
him.
real deal. Great energy. So that's how the film came about. It came out. We were very fortunate. Netflix picked it up. It's been downloaded 10 million times. And I literally ran into some woman recently, and she said, "I was going to dentistry school. I saw your film. I'm now becoming a farmer." like when you talk to people, go, "Oh, I want to pitch this idea for investors on something." You just send them the film, and you don't need to explain it anymore. So
Exactly.
and now we're gonna do a series of 2 more films that'll be coming out in the next couple of years, and it's gonna be harder hitting. Kiss the Ground is like a visually stunning, good storytelling, but we kind of pulled back. We pulled back a bit on going down into some of the, let's say, the darker sides of how food is made in the world, and I've seen a lot of that. So expect a little more gloves coming off on the next one.
Okay, I want to ask you about this article you just wrote recently that I love the title of, Make America's Rivers Blue Again, because I have noticed, but I haven't heard much, and I'm kind of steeped in green soup, in terms of just content, articles, interviews, about why are rivers not blue anymore? They're greenish, brownish. And, you know, it's not a surprise since everything seems to be degraded. All ecosystems seem to are in decline. But I never understood till I read your article exactly all the runoff problem, the fertilizer. I knew some of it, but take us through
Yeah,
what the process is. And then we talk about how we can make them blue again, which is obviously
yeah,
what
yeah,
TV is all about, is the solutions.
yeah, yeah. So indigenous people living here in what we call America now respected nature, and they didn't destroy nature. And they uh, and when Europeans came here, we decided to cut trees and till the fields and and then inventing chemical agriculture 100 years ago. And essentially, agriculture, when it rains, the chemical fertilizers and the pesticides run off into the streams and the waterways. And we show them Kiss the Ground. We don't. You can create fertility without chemicals, working with nature. Holistic grazing of animals, you doing cover crops. Like I have wheat farmers. Matter of fact, I'm wearing this hat. You can see this. It's called Great Plains Regeneration. It's another uh, organization that I founded last year with farmers and ranchers in Oklahoma and Kansas and Nebraska. And we're regenerating the Great Plains. And we just had a fundraiser in Lawrence, Kansas with 200 plus people. And Ray Archuleta spoke there and bringing people together. So, and the reason why I'm focusing on the Great Plains is because it's such a large area of agriculture, and we can learn to farm and ranch in a way that's regenerative without destroying that. And animals are part of that. Animals, we don't need to get rid of animals. And there's a misnomer because of movies, like Cowspiracy, that were basically on false information. Cows aren't the problem. The problem is the humans, how they treat the cows. In fact, I like to say the future of plant-based foods is animal-based.
Hmm.
And what do I
Wow, I
mean by
bet
that?
the vegans must love that.
Yeah, the future of plant-based is animal-based. And in the sense that the farmers and ranchers are now bringing the cows back out onto the land. They're taking them away from the pens, the Cowschwitz, not the Auschwitz, the Cowschwitz. It's like
God,
horrible. It's horrible what they've done.
hard to
It's like,
make me laugh about a Holocaust reference, but
yeah.
my goodness.
But it's it's like what we do to people, and over race and religion is so, it's just so just I'm so blessed that my mom, and dad instilled better values to to honor all races and people. And we need to learn to do that better, but we also disrespect animals. And so when we bring the animals back and we let them participate in that food system, then the wheat growers don't need to use chemical fertilizers. They incorporate the cows. There, a matter of fact, there's a guy named Curtis. Trying to remember his last name. He's a Colorado farmer, like 8,000 acres, really large farm. He doesn't use chemical fertilizer anymore. It's because he incorporates animals and cows. So the raw materials for your Impossible Burger and your Beyond Meat are going to be from farmers who have cows that are fertilizing the grains and the peas and the legumes for the vegan foods, which is kind of ironic. Yeah. And so, but what the vegans want to do now is they get subsidies, right? They want more subsidies, and they're trying to create this thing called cellular meat. And cellular meat is a very dangerous concept. It's essentially is they want to get rid of the cow, and they go, that's the kind of, and the big corporations really love this idea. They say, you mean we can just take the grains and that we plowed up and sprayed fertilizers and pesticides, and instead of sending it going through a cow and then getting the meat and the milk, we're going to send these, like sugar, we're going to convert it into a sugar. We're going to send it to a factory where we're going to have biotechnologists and geneticists and lab technicians and metallurgists and all these things, and they create a big giant steel cow. You got to plug it into a wall and run all sorts of electricity, greenhouse gas emissions. I know this sounds bizarre, but this is what they're doing. And then we create gene replicators, and we create genetically modified, like cells, and then we create fake meat.
Wow. Well, GMOs, that's a whole nother title, OMG on GMOs.
Yeah.
But what do you eat, John Roulac? And then I do want to get back to how do we make rivers blue again?
Yeah. What do I eat? That's I'm working to eat more local foods. It's not always so easy. I try to eat the rainbow. I eat like all sorts of different colors, and I try to eat 30 or 40 or 50 types of different kind of plants, herbs. I like to grow oregano and rosemary. And those are simple things. I got some basil and some collard greens I'm growing. My
So
favorite,
plant-based, but you
yeah,
also eat meat.
yeah, yeah, and I also eat, I eat lamb and beef, pasture, 100% pasture. My favorite dish,
Grass
grass
fed, you
fed,
haven't
yeah,
eaten
grass
that yet.
fed pasture. My favorite dish that I like that I do that I encourage people to try is lentils. Is a very there's something called mung beans. It's similar to lentils. You can use lentils or mung beans. You soak them overnight and wash them, and then I cook them up and I take whatever vegetables that I'm growing or I have in the refrigerator. I can go to the farmer's market, mushrooms, herbs, all sorts of things, ginger, and I throw it all in there. And then I
Cauliflower,
take
those
this
are my
stew and I
favorites.
make the stew that has like 30 or 40, and then I put in Nutiva red palm oil or olive oil. So that's what I try to do that, and then I go on a fast. I haven't done it in a while, but I'll like won't eat any food or drink any water for 18 hours. Now, you should probably talk to your medical doctor before you do this, but I'm kind of a health nut.
I
The other
can
thing that
tell.
I do is I do the plank. I'm giving you some of my health tips. So I'm 62 and I play basketball against 20-year-olds and I can still block their shots and I can still score.
Are you talking about the kind of plank I did in my Pilates class this morning?
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of people, so here's one thing. Not everyone will go to a yoga class all the time, but some people will. And I'm glad you went to Pilates class. But doing the
I didn't
plank,
go anywhere. I went into my my Zoom room.
literally doing that 1 minute or 30 seconds a day will change people's bodies. So I really encourage you to do that. I do that almost every day. Makes a big difference in walking. So I know you had another question for me, but
Yeah,
those are my health.
how do we make not just rivers, but so much of our water, so many of our bodies of water are polluted. The ocean's been treated as a dumping ground, just like our atmosphere has been. And can we get them back to blue? And I don't even want to think about Tahoe, where I was lucky enough to spend
Yeah,
summers growing up. What's going to happen to that
yeah,
pristine lake with the fires and the
yeah,
smoke?
yeah.
And it's not out yet.
By the way, my hummingbird in my hood just came by and
That's a
is
good
enjoying
sign.
a
Saying hello.
beautiful hummingbird. Yeah, I have a plant that the hummingbirds like that I have right outside my window. So I get to be visited by him or her when she comes by. Um, how do we make our rivers blue again? We have to change agriculture. The number one source of water pollution in the world, is both agriculture and textiles as well. But and how do we change agriculture? One, we have to change the hearts and minds of farmers and ranchers and consumers, and that's easier said than done. The technology of how to do it, we know how to do it, but how do we change them? How do we change Washington, D.C.? How do we change the Biden administration? How do we, these are challenges. How do we change, like they have crop insurance, which is dysfunctional. So kiss the ground. In 2023, there's a farm bill. So we need to change the farm bill to change the incentives. It's kind of like if you want to move where the mouse goes, you know what you do? You move the cheese.
Who moved my cheese? Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to change the incentive on how we grow. The challenge is the largest chemical companies in the world that you made the same chemicals that killed people in World War II are in charge of our food system. Monsanto, Bayer, Dow, and DuPont. They are the ones that determine what goes in the farm bill, unfortunately. And the question is, can we rise up as a movement and as a concerned citizens in 2023? And that's what we're hoping to do. Kiss the Ground with a bunch of other groups is working on that to change the farm bill. But we can change how we eat, try to eat more local foods, talk to your farmer, and share the film, Kiss the Ground, get the word out. The odds are that we're not going to be successful. Because usually money and power usually win versus truth and goodness. But sometimes it's the other way around, and that's what
Well,
we hope.
we need to disrupt. And while you've been busy starting all these companies and doing all these amazing things and writing books, I've been trying to disrupt the corporate media, which is where I had my career at CBS on air, and I had to leave to cover environmental news back in 2004. It was on Air America, then the
Right, right.
Progressive Radio Network, and I've decided they're just, for whatever reasons, and there's all kinds of reasons for why it might be. Corporate funding, fossil fuel ads are still running. In
Right.
between, in between flooding and fire coverage, by the way, on MSNBC, no less, Progressive Network. That's what Green TV, I'm going to do a little plug here, but we're brand new. And I had you on as one of my guests because you're really one of the most inspiring disruptors I know. And I didn't even know about half of this. So if you know anybody who believes that education and information and connecting the dots and then scaling, amplifying solutions so we don't have to reinvent the wheel because we have no time, but all shades of green. It's not, as you know, all too well, it's all connected. The ecosystems are all connected, and we need to have conversations like this. We're trying to go from one interview a day to quickly 24/7 green live streaming on every shade of green. So it sounds like you're pretty well connected. Please let us know if there's anyone who thinks that, and I believe it, I know it, I bet my life on it the last 25 years, that one of the missing pieces of the puzzle is communication, where people can really go to find out what's happening and what they can do about it.
That's so important. Yeah. Well, thank you for holding that. Green communication is so important, and yeah.
It's been missing from the mix. I mean, there's great documentaries, and you've made a few, but guess who goes to see them? We greenies who are losing sleep at night because we're worried about the world. I want to get those on overnight on Green TV so that people who don't get exposed to these fabulous documentaries will get to be enlightened. And there's so much material, there's so many problems, there's so many solutions. Thank you for being such a wonderful, rebellious renegade of a solutionary. You did not disappoint, John Roulac.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I enjoy it, so I do it.
Good. Well, I enjoy this, and it's great to be back in the hot seat to try to cool the earth. Hot seat, cool the earth.
Yeah, yeah. So we can sequester a lot of carbon. And one last thing I want to say is, what's more important than only just focusing on carbon is focusing on water, and by transforming agriculture and with agroforestry and holistic grazing and cover crops, we change the water cycle. So the reason why the air has gotten too hot and the oceans are, all these things, we can balance it, but we have to regreen the planet. and we can do that, but we need to focus on it. And also, I encourage people to understand where your food's coming from, because we are in a crash, a kind of an ecological crash that's going to accelerate in the next few years. And so it's important to have that food. And then hopefully I believe it's going to take a crash to kind of crack the egg. And if we're going to make an omelet of a regenerative world, we may have to crack the egg, which may mean that our systems as we know it will no longer function.
I think we're getting close to that point. Doesn't it seem that way? Our food systems are
it's getting there. It's getting there. And but nature is resilient. But we need to regenerate, and everyone and also the other thing is to be grateful and blessed for what we do have. That's the one thing I like to focus on. I feel very grateful for all the people we have in our life, the good food, everything that our parents and our family, everything that, and our ancestors. So, as we get a little older, we start remembering some of those things that are important, which we maybe would have been better if we would have done that when we were younger, but there's no better time than now.
Right. When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago, but if not, then today. And, it's so important to have gratitude. It's absolutely a practice that has gotten me through, but it's also important, and it's connected, to have empathy. I look at these poor people who have just lost everything, including family members, on television, in the middle of the tornadoes and the fires and the floods, and it's continuing and it's getting worse. That's what motivates me, because we owe them, spreading this information, connecting the dots, and getting solutions out there, because we've kind of gone from what problem to, oh yeah, it's too late, we're screwed. And what about that sweet spot in the middle, which is where I've been trying to work for 20 years, where we, interview people like you, the experts. And if we're not tapping into y'all, I live in Texas now, y'all, what better thing is there to do than to share the wisdom, share the wealth? So thanks for doing your part and for taking time to share it with us.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, John, great. See you next time, everybody.